Christians have long understood that the beast and the Antichrist come to power in part financially, that the mark of the beast will control the world's population by controlling their ability to buy and sell. No news there for those of us reading the Bible. What I find utterly shocking is that numerous secular financial gurus are now seeing this scenario unfold in front of their very eyes in our modern world and are realizing it is the book of Revelation coming true in real time.
The whole world is moving in unison, and it seems to make no difference whether you're in a first world country or third world country or whatever, however you want to describe it. Everybody's doing the same thing, and it kind of reminds me of what we saw in COVID. Like overnight, it seems like every country in the world was doing masking mandates, and the same language was being used for why they're doing it, and it all happened within a few days.
This guy, E. Edward Griffin, gets it. None of this is an accident. Digital currency, artificial intelligence, and transhumanism are all coming to the forefront all within this same very few number of years. The intelligent, both secular and Christian, realize this is no coincidence. Unfortunately, some of them miss the fact that the Bible detailed this all 2,000 years ago. But we're not going to miss that. We're going to explain it to you today. And just this week, an established financial advisory group, Stansberry Research, came out saying the Federal Reserve is going to intentionally destroy the U.S. dollar to usher in digital currency. Wall Street firms saying that the dollar is about to be intentionally destroyed by the U.S. government and its central bank. And none of them are in favor of this, by the way. They're worried because they see the government and the banks working in a way that is counter to the best interest of its people and even the worst interest of the rich. Something like that is just huge. So today we have a fascinating discussion by one of these guys, G. Edward Griffin, the author of the book Creature from Jekyll Island, a bestseller from a few years ago that inspired millions, including Ron Paul and Robert Kiyosaki, people of that ilk, about the horrible scam that the Federal Reserve Bank is. Unfortunately, Mr. Griffin was only seeing part of the issue at the time when he wrote the book. Now he's seeing a whole lot more, and it terrifies him, probably because he appears to be an unbeliever. It is a beast, this Federal Reserve, just as he called it in his book's title, The Creature, and what they're doing, he now realizes, is completely orchestrated.
The whole world is moving in unison, and it seems to make no difference whether you're in a first world country or third world country or whatever, however you want to describe it. Everybody's doing the same thing, and it kind of reminds me of what we saw in COVID. Like overnight, it seems like every country in the world was doing masking mandates, and the same language was being used for why they're doing it, and it all happened within a few days. And it was like going out to your lawn the morning after a rain and seeing that the lawn is covered with mushrooms. They all came up at the same time, and the day before, why, none of them were there. And it's I remember seeing this as a boy thinking, where did those mushrooms come from? I didn't see them all year, and all of a sudden here they are, and the whole lawn is covered with mushrooms. And the reason I mention it is because it's sort of like that. We see the whole world covered with this mushrooming message. In this case, we're talking about central bank digital currencies all at once. And I think the significance, the real hardcore significance of this fact is that we have to realize this banking fraternity is truly a fraternity or an industry or a cabal or whatever you want to call it, depending on your mood. It's truly global, and they do work together in a highly coordinated fashion. So nothing is by accident. And these decisions that are being implemented today were made decades ago.
Mr. Griffin's evidence that this is a true, real, proven conspiracy, not just a conspiracy theory, is how all the nations moved in lockstep at the outset of COVID and how they're moving in lockstep again now at the outset of digital currency. that this unfolding bank crisis that we're in is intentionally designed to bring in digital currency. There's like 114 countries now actively exploring the idea, or at least pilot projects of a central bank digital currency. And these countries make up 95% of the total GDP of the whole world, 16 of the 20 G20 nations. So how did this happen? All in 1 year, that all these decided to do the same thing at the same time? Let Mr. Griffin explain it a little more.
And the plans have been in process for a long time. The spores for the mushroom, in other words, have been in place for a long time. And now the signal has been given, let's bring it up to the surface so everybody can see it. And now we call it a crisis. But in fact, the crisis started decades ago it started pretty much with the formation of central banks. When you combine central banks, which are essentially private banking institutions, you go into partnership between a private banking institution and the government, which has the power of coercion of law. You've got a creature there that is a pretty dangerous creature, because you've got people who are controlling the money supply. And that means they control just about everything, because if you have the ability, the legal authority to create money out of literally nothing except the promise to pay it back, but you can create any amount of money that you want, and with that huge flow of cash, you're able to buy up politicians, and you just buy them up. And that most of them, unfortunately, I have to say, most of them are for sale, or for rent, or for lease. And so we come to the amazing conclusion that for a long time we've been living in a system where, although the mushrooms were not on the surface, they were not far from the surface, and that the field of mushrooms looks like this. It's that the world is now in the hands of the banking institutions, and instead of governments regulating the banks are now regulating the governments. We're just now beginning to see the mushrooms come up, and we can see the impact of it and how it might really change our lives in the very near future, so that we no longer have freedom of choice in the market. We will not be able to buy and sell without permission from this cabal, and I think it's probably a good name for it. So that's how I look at it. It's not so much the details of who is doing what today, what the latest announcement was, because it's all more of the same, just moving constantly and steadily toward that goal, which they have talked about for decades and decades, that goal of a cashless society where the individual citizens no longer have money. We used to think that money was our money. We could put it in our pocket, put it in our coffee can, bury it, or put it in a mattress or something. We can put it in our pockets. No, in a cashless society, we have nothing to put in our pockets. It's all digital. Of course, we have digital money now, but we still also have, in addition to digital money, we have actual currency, which we can consider our own. But where we're headed, and they've talked about it for a long, long time. Where we're headed now, and you can see it very clearly on the grass, is nobody will have cash. There'll be no such thing as cash, which means it's not our money. We don't own it. We'll be allowed to use numbers, and they'll give them a name. They'll allow us to call it a dollar or whatever they allow us to call it, but it's not going to be the same thing. And the amount of those that we have will be allocated to us. It will not be earned by us. It will be allocated to us based on our social record and our political attitudes, so that those who are cooperative with the cabal will live pretty well. And those who don't, like I am, are not going to live too well.
I think this is a very important point that Mr. Griffin makes, that the bank's ability to print unlimited amounts of money, which could only occur after Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1972, allowed these banks to buy politicians and our governments with all that extra money. And the Nixon angle shows how far back the planning for this takeover was. I mean, we're talking, 40, 50 years ago. Buying the politicians in the nation is how these bankers got the nations to move in lockstep with each other. The same very few bankers at the top are telling the leaders of our nations what to do, and all of them appear to be doing it. Remember, this is what Revelation says about the entity Misty Babylon, the great harlot. And the woman you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. Revelation 17:18. This coming one world government system controls all the governments of the world. And this is how they did it, by printing money and then buying the politicians. There's a huge takeaway in this in terms of how we get ready for this. So listen, this is very, very important. There is no way you can vote this out of office. It isn't just one party. It isn't Democrats or Republicans. They own the winners and they own the losers. And they rig elections. They control the governments already. This great reset is a move to something else. Something else is coming. So what will be that impact? Let's continue to listen.
Well, yes, they can track us, but they're, the Internet of Things and the whole development, rollout of 5G technology will elevate the ability to track us by a factor probably of 100. They'll know what our heartbeat is. I mean, because they'll track us from cell phones and things which can monitor a certain electronic or electromagnetic field in our bodies and things like that. They'll track when we blink an eye. They'll know everything about us. They'll even know our moods. They'll know when we're thinking about objecting, even though we might say something, they'll know when we're not telling the truth. So it's the ultimate form of tracking.
And why do they want to know what we're thinking? Why is that important to them?
As long as you are not making waves and causing opposition to the program of the ruling elite, why, you'll do okay, because they need you. They need you to work and produce whatever you produce for the system. But the minute the AI detects something or patterns of performance on your part that rings a bell, then they'll suddenly look at you very closely and decide whether or not you really are, you deserve to continue to even exist. Because if they want you out of the way, they'll think of ways, or your AI systems will think of ways to get you out of the picture. In other words, to eliminate you from the surface of the earth. And it might be that they want you to go in and get another shot of some kind of a vaccine, which is going to be deadly or something like that. I'm just picking that at random. What is it they're after? Is it that they're after more money, or are they after control over humans and so forth? That's a good question, because if you get that one wrong, it's pretty hard to predict what they're going to do. And I think the answer to that question is that they're after control over human beings, and money is merely a means of achieving that. And it's hard to get your head around that, because right now money is power. Yeah. Because if you have money, you have power over other human beings, because you can pay for them. And if you can deny them money and so forth, you can give them the carrot and stick treatment. But when you're in a system where money has been removed from the equation, then the thing that is used to replace money becomes the point of power, and that would be this international monetary unit that you were mentioning. And if all nations had to abide by using the same unit, then a decision made by, let's say, a local tyranny in one nation would be applied around the world, and that person would have no place to go. They couldn't escape to another country. They couldn't get their authority and their autonomy back by merely taking their savings and putting it into a different currency from another country. All the options of escape that we now enjoy would be gone. So I think the answer to that question of what it is that they really are trying to achieve is that it's the control over human beings. And in the past, meaning at the present time still, that control is achieved by money. But they're working toward a point where money has been removed from, money as we think of it has been removed from the equation.
So their goal isn't money. It's ultimate power. Power to know what people think, so they can eliminate everyone who is non-compliant and everyone who is righteous. If you wonder why horribly unrighteous things are being highlighted by the media and government as good right now, it's to promote this agenda that comes directly from Satan. You will be asked to support this as well in the near future. It will be a test of your loyalty either to the government or to God. And that's what Orwell was talking about in 1984. A selection or evolution with the government eliminating or changing everyone who might pose a risk to them. The Bible talks about Mystery Babylon doing this as well. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who have been slain on the earth. And interestingly, this passage occurs directly after a passage about pharmakeia. So maybe Mr. Griffin isn't too far off in his prediction of how they will eliminate people, something to keep in mind. Mr. Griffins continues about how they will reward people as well.
But money as we think of it has been removed from the equation, and now it's just units. And we'll be living, as I see it at least, in what we might call a universal military society. Now, anybody that's been in the military and understands that, because if you go in as a buck private, you don't get much money. You have a few dollars a month that you can go down to the shop, the camp store, and buy a beer or something like that. But you get all your clothes, you get your medical care, you get your shelter, everything you need really is all provided for you. But if you're a general or a sergeant or middle management, you get up in the officers' ranks, you get living quarters, you get better food, and you get better clothes. And if you're really at the top of the rank and you're the 2 or 3 or 4-star general, you've got a big mansion to live in, and you've got a limousine and a driver and an airplane that you can fly around the world in. But it's not yours, but you still command it like it was yours. So it's the end result is the same. It's those at the top ruling those at the bottom. But the mechanism by which it is achieved, or will be achieved if they accomplish this change to digital currencies, will be a little bit different. And it will not be the old classic style of he who has the most money. It would be the new classic style of he who has the rank on his shoulder. How many stripes do you have? Or how many stars on your cap? And it may not be visible that way, but it'll be. You remember in the old days, all the top egalitarians all wore silk hats. Tall, and the taller the hat means the more money you had. Only the very wealthy could wear the big, tall silk hat. And then the newbies were wearing short silk hats. And you can look at a person and see their rank in society by the clothes they wore. And if somebody down at a working level decided to buy a silk hat, he would have probably been punished in some severe way, because you're not allowed to be an imposter and be part of a class that you're not entitled to be, and so forth. And nobody did that. I mean, you've never seen pictures, those old historic pictures where the bankers or the politicians are speaking before huge throngs of the population. The people in the population section are all wearing their little working caps or bandanas or something, and the guys up on the dais have all got their silk hats on, and nobody in that audience would dare put a silk hat on because there would be repercussions. Well, it's kind of a dramatic illustration of what actually happens in our society too. We have to, by the mores of our society, we have to stay in line. And I think we're moving toward more of that in the future, where we will be recognized in some way by the clothes in which we wear. And maybe we won't have stripes on our sleeves or stars on our collars or hats, but there'll be other ways where they'll be able to identify it. And it must be just hold your hand up to the barcode and see how you register, what is your social score.
So in essence, this is a system where the few control the entire world. One that is rejoiced over by all the people in heaven when it is finally destroyed. They don't rejoice over Nazi Germany or the Roman Empire being destroyed. The Bible records them rejoicing over this entity being destroyed. And then, of course, who destroys it? The beast. People in heaven don't seem to rejoice over the final destruction of the beast. It was this entity that comes before the beast, that comes before any rapture. But how do you prepare for something like this? where you lose everything you once valued, everything you had in this world. The answer is by not valuing the things of this world, and rather valuing God and placing your focus on Him and His kingdom. I know that sounds trite, too simple, but really, it is what the Bible teaches. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, and this will be a test. The Bible also teaches that half of those attending our churches will not value God more and will fall away from the faith because this system is going to strip away everything from an everyday normal person. So click right here to see what the Bible has to say about this and what buying and selling has to do about it, because you'll find that fascinating. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.